Update, brought to you by Simcox Advocates, advising businesses and families since 1949. Visit simcox.com or call 690 300. Manx Radio's Update with Andy Wint.
First of May, good evening, it's 5:30. This is Update for Monday, 19th of June 2023 from Manx Radio. 30 minutes to look at the latest news on the Isle of Man. And background to that news and sport and business and Sea Watch and travel updates and the newsmakers in person. This evening, someone in Cabinet offices has been accessing personal data, your personal data. Department for Enterprise is talking to infrastructure about, yes, the airport, new regulations on large vehicles overnighting in residential areas. The Health Minister denies misleading Tynwald, and a Liverpool man's been jailed for ketamine possession.
Man Benham for all your business and legal needs.
First of all, at 29 minutes ahead of 6 o'clock, the Update News headlines. Fast to my Dave Moore.
Fast to my, an investigation's underway following security breaches in a number of government departments and public authorities. The Information Commissioners confirmed a senior officer in Cabinet Office accessed personal data in the system used to record and manage Freedom of Information requests. A survey which shows 79% of doctors disagreeing that there is strong leadership within Manx Care does not paint a true picture, according to the body's chief executive. Teresa Cope says with less than half those invited taking part, it only represents the views of a small proportion of the island's health workers. More than 1 in 10 flights scheduled in and out of the Isle of Man during March were cancelled. The latest Civil Aviation Authority figures show almost 11% failed to take to the air, the worst total of any airport in the British Isles throughout this period. A tourist submersible used to view the wreckage of the Titanic has gone missing in the North Atlantic Ocean. It's understood that as of 4 p.m. UK time, there'd been no signal from it for over 7 hours. The average interest on a 2-year fixed mortgage deal in the UK has risen to 6%. It means higher bills for 400,000 people whose contracts expire before September. And the ASLEF unions announced that train drivers at 16 rail operators will refuse to work overtime for 6 days next month. It coincides with the first week of Wimbledon. Those are the Update News headlines. The next bulletin is at 6.
Man Benham. Contact us by phone, video call, email or face-to-face. We're happy to connect with you. Manx Radio Weather with Manx Glass and Glazing.
Goromaya, thank you, Dave. From the Ronaldsway Met Office, there's no wind warning in operation for the North Irish Sea. State of sea is slight, later moderate and slight overnight. Some evening sunshine, then mist and fog later this evening and overnight in a light southerly breeze. Overnight minimum 14 degrees. And for Jamert, Tuesday will be cloudy with the risk of rain, then drier and brighter in a light southerly later. Daylight maximum 20 Celsius, down to 14 through the night into Jacrane. Wednesday dry with sunny spells, top temperature 20 degrees. Tide's still on the way out, low water 17 minutes past 7, sunset 5 to 10 tonight. Remember, it's the summer solstice on Wednesday. Make the most of it. High water 24 minutes past 1 a.m. Sunrise tomorrow morning at 4:45 and low water 4 minutes before 8.
Manx Glass and Glazing can produce bespoke splashbacks for your kitchen in any colours. Speak to the team on 674 573.
Data breaches in a number of government departments and public authorities have sparked an investigation. The Information Commissioners confirmed a senior officer in Cabinet Office accessed personal data in the system used to record and manage requests for freedom of information. The details from Siobhan Fletcher.
The Information Commissioner launched the investigation after it received a personal data breach report from the Department of Health and Social Care regarding a senior officer in the Cabinet Office. It is confirmed that between the 1st of April 2022 and the 22nd of March 2023, that individual accessed the personal data contained in over 540 FOI requests made to 20 separate public authorities on more than 1,200 occasions. The information viewed relates to both the detail of the request and the name, address and contact details of the requester. The Office of Cybersecurity and Information Assurance has confirmed that no personal information has been viewed by any individual outside of the public service or transferred outside of the government network. This has led to the assessment that the risk to the rights and freedoms of data subjects is low. The full list of affected public authorities is available at manxradio.com. Anyone who submitted an FOI request to any of them during the dates highlighted and wishes to find out whether they've been impacted should contact the public authority directly.
The Enterprise Department says it's in talks with the Infrastructure Department about problems at Isle of Man Airport. It follows a surge in flight cancellations and ones that end up returning to their point of departure. Nigel rang Manninline today, says he's lost £1,200 of business during TT when a party of visitors had their flight called off.
He was in Bristol. He was sat 50 minutes on the runway to be told by the captain, I quote, "The reason why we can't fly into the Isle of Man at the moment is because they are on their break and they go offline," which is pretty scary, and they've told us that they will come back online in approximately 20 minutes to obviously allow us to come into the Isle of Man. With this situation rolling on, I'm sure there would have been a build-up to air traffic control staff issues much before it's got to this level. I've been on the island 34 years. I've never known a situation like this where it's had to be closed every day for so many hours. It's pretty appalling, and we all know that. We have this absolutely appalling condition down at the airport, and it should have never been allowed to happen.
OK, Mark Lewin?
Definitely we are hearing more and more concerns coming across the whole economy, and do recognise there's a real challenge down at the airport. There are a variety of reasons feeding into that. The air traffic control is one at the moment. We've had weather. Clearly today is another issue of that, and there's been issues, and you mentioned one airline, but there's issues in terms of across the UK and Europe and further afield, so there is a really complex situation here. It's not an area that Department for Enterprise directly is responsible for, but we do work closely with the Department of Infrastructure. We were meeting with them on Friday. There's further conversations this week just in terms of looking to understand other things that we might be able to do in this space.
The Isle of Man in 30 minutes. Update on Manx Radio with Andy Wint.
Fast by 23 minutes before 6, a Liverpool man who was caught with thousands of pounds worth of ketamine at a Douglas hotel has been sent to jail. The story from Tessa Hawley.
Thomas Anthony Fitzsimmons was told his claim that the drugs recovered from his room were for his personal use was clearly nonsense during sentencing at Douglas Courthouse. Police arrested the 31-year-old at the Mannin Hotel just after 5 a.m. on the 5th of March after reports that he was causing damage. He was located slumped outside and told officers he'd taken a lot of ket. When they searched his room, they found 0.5 grams of cannabis with a street value of £10 and 172 grams of ketamine valued at between £6,983 and £8,617. He told police he'd paid £250 for 5 ounces of the Class B drug when he arrived on the island 4 days earlier, adding he thought he'd paid a lower price for the ketamine because it was a bad batch. Fitzsimmons of Woodsorrel Road also informed officers he took 2 ounces of ketamine daily. He later pleaded guilty to possessing the Class B drug with intent to supply, possessing cannabis and causing damage to property. Prosecutor James Robinson described Fitzsimmons' claims as an interesting proposition, adding that information from the police showed ketamine usage was clearly on the rise in the Isle of Man. During sentencing, the Liverpool man's advocate said while she accepted ketamine usage was more prevalent, there had not been a stark increase in the last 6 years. Sending Fitzsimmons to prison for 38 months, Deemster Graham Cook said ketamine was an emerging unlawful drug, adding, "I take the view that it is my public duty to impose a deterrent sentence."
The Department of Infrastructure has been consulting with local authorities on how parking large vehicles overnight in residential areas is affecting residents. The Minister, Chris Thomas MHK, says they've been taking guidelines from local people about where and how to introduce restrictions, and says new regulations could come into effect sometime next year.
The law basically says that a person commits an offence if without reasonable excuse the person causes or permits a relevant vehicle to wait on a restricted road road on a Saturday or Sunday or before 7 a.m. or after 6 p.m. on any other day. So we've got to define what is those certain vehicles. We've got to define what are restricted roads. We've got to define what is a relevant vehicle. Does it include motorhomes? Is it vehicles of more than that length, more than that height? Is it done by weight? And that's where we are. We're in the process of beginning draft legislation on which we'll consult. Large vehicles overnight in residential areas has been a perennial issue. It's a specific example of the parking issue that afflicts Douglas and many other parts of the Isle of Man. So I can't say we invented the problem. It's just we're trying to come up with a solution, and that's always the hardest part. The Act is already there. The Act allows the DOI to make regulations, and now we're going to be formalising that with actually putting together regulations that would specify where they would apply. So presumably it'll be on everywhere that's with a speed limit of less than 30 miles per hour or something, but that's still to be defined. What the length is, what the height is, whether we go about it in a different way, what we want to include, and also it'll then work out, and then also enforcement's always a very important issue, and I think the current intention is to look to a fixed penalty notice regime. So if you're in breach of it, you get a penalty like you would for a parking offence.
Sea Watch with the Isle of Man Steam Packet Company.
Motor ship Ben McCree just entering the outskirts of Douglas Bay at the moment. She left Heysham at 23 minutes past 2, and she'll be on the link span in the next 20-25 minutes or so. Departing this evening at 7:45, heading for Heysham, getting there by 11:30, and the overnight departure 2:15 back to Douglas tomorrow morning at 6. High-speed craft Manannan departed Douglas at 1:03. She's in Liverpool now on the link span by the pierhead, and will be departing Liverpool at 7:15, back to Douglas tonight at 10 o'clock. And tomorrow morning's departures, 8:45, Ben McCree heads to Heysham, and the afternoon departure, 3 o'clock, Manannan heads to Liverpool.
Like the Steam Packet on Facebook for the latest sailing information.
The Health Minister's denied misleading Tynwald after his predecessor, Rob Callister, claims he made a factually incorrect statement about him. Laurie Hooper, MHK, discussed Mr Callister's involvement in government's handling of the Dr Rosalind Ranson Tribunal at May's sitting. It resulted in Mr Callister accusing the Minister of throwing him under the bus, and he's since posted on social media to say he's asked for a formal apology from Mr Hooper. Manx Radio's political correspondent Phil Gaughan is following the story.
One person has responded to a social media post by Laurie Hooper and said, "Enough of this bickering, it's time you got on with running the health service and not this kind of schoolboy playground squabble." And to a certain extent, they're right. But there is a lot more to this in as much as political reputations are at stake. Obviously, Rob Callister is nursing a very bruised reputation following Tynwald's conclusion that he was dishonest in the way he went about his affairs. And now, of course, Rob Callister is accusing the Health Minister of misleading the House. So this is a very serious charge that Rob Callister is levying at the Health Minister. It's a difficult one to know who could back down. I mean, one might have thought that the best thing from the government perspective is just to leave this as quietly as possible. Rob Callister is obviously very hurt by the process and feels as though he needs to vindicate his position in some way. So the more fuel that's thrown on the fire is the more likely Rob will continue to battle. However, when a minister's reputation is brought into question, which is what's happened here, to a certain extent, the minister can't just let that one lie. So, yeah, it's hard to know how this is going to end up without a further investigation by the Tynwald Members and Standards Committee.
Manx Radio Business Briefing.
At 16 minutes before 6, the fashion and household retailer Next surged after it upgraded its full-year sales and profit guidance following a much better than expected trading in the last 7 weeks, boosted by warmer weather and the impact of pay rises. In an unscheduled trading update, Next said that full-price sales in the first 7 weeks of the second quarter were up 9.3% versus last year, compared to guidance for a 5% decline. The group said that during the period it's beaten its full-price sales estimates by £93 million. And for a full daily market report, go to ramseycrookall.com. The Italian government's move to block a Chinese state-owned company from taking control of Pirelli, the giant tyre maker. The decision's part of measures by the Italian government to protect the 151-year-old Milan-based firm's independence. Beijing-controlled chemical giant Sinochem is Pirelli's biggest shareholder with a 37% stake. It comes as tensions between Beijing and the West are in focus as the US Secretary of State visits China. Yesterday, Pirelli told investors that the Italian government had ruled that only Camfin, a company controlled by Pirelli's boss Marco Tronchetti Provera, could nominate candidates to be its chief exec. Pirelli also said the Italian government, had decided that any changes to Pirelli's corporate governance could be subject to official scrutiny.
The Stock Market Report, brought to you by Ramsey Crookall.
US and European markets fell as investors remained jittery over the economic outlook. The US dollar was tentatively higher. Global oil prices fell as questions over China's economy outweighed OPEC Plus's output cuts and the seventh straight drop in the number of oil and gas rigs operating in the United States. Gold ticked down in light trade, pressured by a stronger dollar. The numbers now from Ramsey Crookall. At the close in London, the FTSE 100 down 0.7% at 7,588. The DAX in Frankfurt down almost a whole percent at 16,195. The Dow Jones a short time ago in New York City was at 34,299. The Nasdaq Tech Stocks Index at 13,689 and the S&P 500 at 4,409. In the exchange markets, the British pound sterling trading at $1 27.9 cents, €1 17.1 cents and 23 South African rand 27.9 cents. In commodities, gold is down about 0.3% at $1,951 per troy ounce, and a barrel of Brent crude is down 0.25% at $76.08.
You've got an investment plan?
Yeah, Mike set it up.
But don't you need loads of money to do that?
Not this one. It's called Shearwater from Ramsey Crookall, and you pay in monthly as little as £100. So it's like saving regularly, really helping us invest in the future. For a house, or the kids' education.
£100 a month? I could easily do that.
You should. The sooner you start, the better.
Invest in your future with as little as £100 a month. Shearwater from Ramsey Crookall, the island's investment specialist for 75 years. Call 717171 or visit ramseycrookall.com. Licensed and regulated by the Isle of Man Financial Services Authority.
A survey of doctors working at Noble's hospitals highlighted concerns over the culture within Manx Care. The British Medical Association and Manx Care have both been reacting to the findings from the latest Culture of Care Barometer questionnaire. That story from Sian Cowper.
More than 160 doctors were invited to take part in the study compiled by the NHS and King's College London, with 72 responding to the questionnaire. On the subject of leadership, 79% disagree or strongly disagree that there is strong leadership at the highest level of the organisation. I asked Manx Care Chief Executive Teresa Cope for her thoughts on this figure.
We have to acknowledge that is the way they feel, and we again commit to working with them to make the necessary improvements so all staff can have confidence in the leadership of Manx Care. But I have to sort of counter that with this is a very small proportion of people who feel like that. It's really important we hear their views and why they think that. But I also know we have a CQC report which has tested the entire organisation, where the CQC have recognised that the leadership of Manx Care have the appropriate skills, the ability, integrity and experience to lead the organisation.
65% felt they disagreed or strongly disagreed that their service is valued, with the same percentage stating they would not recommend Manx Care as a good place to work. More than 3/4 of respondents disagreed or strongly disagreed that the organisation has a positive culture, with 11% agreeing and 1% strongly agreeing. The BMA says these results show a persistent culture of poor senior leadership and of poor behaviours not being consistently tackled. The response was more positive on the subject of teams, with 58% agreeing or strongly agreeing that when things get difficult, they can rely on their colleagues, and 54% stating they feel able to ask for help. You can read the full response from the BMA and Manx Care at manxradio.com.
Update brought to you by Simcox Advocates. Manx Radio Sport.
Here's our sports editor, Faster My Rob Pritchard.
Faster My, good evening. The Special Olympics Isle of Man team has now begun its latest exciting journey as they take part in the 2023 World Summer Games. The opening ceremony for the event in Berlin took place on Saturday night, involving 7,500 athletes from 174 countries, with a crowd of around 70,000 in attendance for the ceremony at the Olympic Stadium in the German capital. Competition is now underway with the Isle of Man team of 18 athletes competing in 7 different sports of aquatics, badminton, bocce, bowling, cycling, gymnastics and swimming, with the games running until Sunday the 25th of June. Elsewhere for Special Olympics, it was a successful weekend for their swimmers who competed in Liverpool on Saturday. In the morning sessions, there were silver medals in the 25-metre freestyle for Chloe Rollett, Dawn Horsfield, Ben Mason and Edgar Denyer, with Dylan Butler claiming bronze. Meanwhile, in the afternoon, Chloe took second place in the 25-metre breaststroke, Edgar was fourth in the 50-metre backstroke, and in the 50-metre freestyle there were third-place finishes for Edgar and Chloe, Dawn fourth and Ben eighth. In football, Michael United Football Club is set to start its own women's team. The club is now inviting female players of all abilities to register their interest should they wish to join. Training sessions for the squad will begin on Saturday the 24th of June from 11:30am to 1pm at Kirkmichael Football Pitch. Efforts have been underway since March this year to gauge interest and build numbers to form a women's side. And in athletics, there was strong performances from 2 of the Isle of Man's female athletes across respective events at the weekend. Manx Harriers competitor Lydia Morris won the women's 200-metre contest during the Northern Ireland Ulster Track and Field Championships being held in Belfast. Her time in the final of 26.11 seconds was also a new personal best over that distance. Meanwhile, there was a strong result for Ireland fell runner Nikki Arthur, who took on the gruelling 95-mile West Highland Way race in Scotland, which was held on Saturday and Sunday. Arthur finished in a time of 20 hours, 15 minutes and 44 seconds, which saw her finish second in the women's class and an impressive 13th in the overall standings.
Manx Radio Travel, driven by Quayside Tyres and Service Centre.
Inbound at Ronald's Way, the 5:25 Loganair from Manchester is delayed until 8 o'clock tonight. Then it's the 10 to 8 inbound Loganair from London City, that's on time. And the 5 to 8 Loganair from Liverpool, the patient transfer plane, is delayed until 25 past 10 tonight. Last inbound tonight is the EasyJet 25 to 9 from London Gatwick, currently showing on time. Outbound tonight, the 6 o'clock Loganair to Liverpool, delayed until 6:15 tonight. Then we're looking at the 5 past 9 EasyJet back to Gatwick, currently showing on time. On the roads, Falkland Drive in Onken is closed due to water main work. Temporary lights on Ballycottier Crescent at the Isle of Man Business Park in Braddon for water main work. In Farm Hill in Douglas, temporary lights on Stevenson Way for trench work. Glen Helen still got those temporary 24-hour lights on the TT course for tree felling. Lights too in Cumberland Road, Ramsey for resurfacing, and Ballacollister Road, Lax is closed between Crotty Quill Road and Rental Hill for resurfacing. In Peel, East Quays closed between the House of Manannan and the Road Bridge for work on the road and pavements. In Dorby, temporary 24-hour lights on the main road. At Ballymena Road, Jerby's got phase closures for water main replacement, and elsewhere in Douglas, temporary 24-hour lights on Ballacameen Road for resurfacing.
Quayside Tyres and Service Centre. Spread your payments interest-free. Get more with
Quayside. 2 important surveys into the health of the Isle of Man's king and queen scallop fisheries offer good news for the sector. The surveys were carried out independently by the Manx Industry and Bangor University and are currently being analysed. Here's Chairman of the Manx Fish Producers Association, Dr. David Beard.
If you look at the average catch per fishing trip, it's actually about 100 kilos higher per fishing trip than it has been for the last 2 seasons, and 200 kilos higher than it was 3 seasons ago. So what this means is that the boats are going out and they're actually catching quicker during the time that they're allowed to fish, because they're restricted to 12-hour fishing during the day, which is very different to the UK waters where you can have 24 hours fishing. So that's a really good good positive, that the fact that they're catching quickly. And we were analysing the results of the fishery just a week ago, and when we got the end of the season report, and on every fishing ground the catch rates are higher than they have been for a number of years, for 5 or 6 seasons. That's on every fishing ground. So what that means is there's less fishing time, because you can catch your daily catch limit in a shorter time. So the good thing about that is there's less seabed contact time, and yet the boats are able to catch their daily catch limit. So all of that's a positive. We had to have the long-term management plan in place for king scallop and be able to justify reducing the number of vessels that could fish here, because if you don't have control over the potential effort that can go into the fishery, then it's impossible to manage the resource properly. You've got to know what your maximum effort could be in any given season, and we can do that now thanks to this new king scallop management plan. We're actually in the process of bringing in a long-term management plan for the queen scallops as well now, and hopefully that will be in place in the next 6 to 12 months.
Update brought to you by Simcox Advocates, advising businesses and families since 1949. Visit simcox.com or call 690 300.
Remember to like Manx Radio on Facebook and subscribe to the Manx Radio YouTube channel. And if you use Twitter or LinkedIn, follow Manx Radio, and your Twitter and LinkedIn feed will be updated as we post stuff. 2 new species of isopods have been found in Manx waters for the first time by a volunteer for the Manx Wildlife Trust. The charity's marine officer, Lara Howe, says the work of keen volunteers is vital for making new discoveries.
One of our sea search snorkelers is a lady called Sue Harvey. They found 2 new isopod species new to the Isle of Man, and they were found in Castletown on some seaweeds at the beginning of the year. Sue's very keen, along with many of our other volunteers, and she's been doing quite a few sort of invertebrate type workshops and things like that. So she's already got her eye in, and what she did was she found some seaweed and just had a look through it and rinsed it through in a bucket of water to see what would sort of effectively fall off, and that's how she managed to find the isopods. So the first time they've been recorded, so it's very exciting. It's great to get out there and collect biological data so we know what's going on in our environment, and in this case in our marine environment. It's really, really important. And because we've got more volunteers going out like our Sea Search group and other keen volunteers, there's an invertebrate group on the island as well who are going out with finding new records all the time, and it's through this amazing effort of our keen volunteers that this is happening.
That's it for Update tonight, compiled from the resources of Manx Radio's news department. Thanks to newsreader Dave Moore, producer Rhiann Evans. I'm Andy Wint, back with another update tomorrow at 5:30.
WINT